The poor should be fine with water, right? James's mother said this and burst into laughter. I frowned at her lack of decorum. Maybe? Right after that, James's sister looked at me and turned pale. I let out a slight chuckle. I am Diane Morris. This year, I will turn 54. I divorced my ex-husband when my daughter Christina was 3 years old. The reason for the divorce was irreconcilable differences. Moreover, my ex-husband didn't work and was always drinking. No matter how many times I told him, he never stopped. Naturally, our household finances became dire. I thought I didn't need such a family, so I decided to divorce him. We divorced without any compensation or child support. Since then, it's been just Christina and me. Until the divorce, I was a housewife. When I had to raise Christina alone, I started working. I couldn't leave young Christina at home alone, so right after the divorce, I survived on piecework jobs. Of course, our living situation was precarious. Even working from morning to night, the salary was low. Those were days of constant saving. There were times when I ran out of money the day before payday. And I went without eating anything myself. Despite the hardships, I managed to raise Christina. Now that Christina has become a working adult, I have more free time. And I've started dedicating a lot of my time to work. Using my experience with piecework, I began creating handmade items. Now, it has become successful and turned into a business. There have also been changes in my private life. One such change is Christina's engagement. She started dating a man named James Simpson, who was her supervisor at work and 5 years her senior. Christina once showed me a photo of James, and he seemed like a fine young man. It appears Christina took lessons from her father, as James seems very responsible. I am happy about the happiness Christina has found. My life is also approaching a turning point. From now on, I plan to live my life. One day. Mom, there's something I need to talk to you about. Christina spoke to me after dinner, hesitating in a way that was unusual for her. I replied, thinking about how rare it was for her to approach me like this. What's the rush? You seem different somehow. Then Christina tentatively said to me, actually, I've decided to marry James. Really? That's great. Congratulations. I haven't actually met James, so I don't know much about him. I hope he's as good as he seems in the photos. I'm glad you said that, Mom. I was worried you might oppose it. Christina seemed relieved that I didn't object. Her expression was clearly more relaxed. Then she suggested, so, I'd like you to meet James this coming weekend. Christina wanted to introduce James before getting married. Being the serious person she is, she probably wants to reassure me by showing me what her fiancé James is like. I nodded firmly at Christina. I understand. I'd like to meet James and see what kind of person he is. Mom. Christina spoke happily. And so, I was going to meet James. It was Sunday this weekend. I was waiting at home for Christina and James. It was almost 11 o'clock. Christina was about to bring James over. Then, at that moment, the doorbell rang. Yes. I opened the door, and there stood Christina and James. Nice to meet you. I'm James Simpson, and I'm engaged to Christina. James said that and greeted me. I felt a bit reassured by James' politeness. Christina is my precious only daughter. I was glad that her partner seemed decent. Please come in, I told them, inviting Christina and James into the house. James still seemed like a fine young man inside the house. He brought some famous brand confections that are sold in department stores as a gift. He also happily talked about how he and Christina met. James, stop it, you're embarrassing me. Christina said shyly, calling out to James. Seeing Christina like this was refreshing to me. However, the pleasant atmosphere changed in the next moment. By the way, is your father at work today? James looked around and asked. His expression was somewhat curious. I was quite perplexed by James' remark. I glanced at Christina, and her complexion was a bit off. She must have kept the fact that we were a mother-child family from James. Honestly, Christina was at fault for keeping it silent. Old houses often face prejudice against single-parent families. I steeled myself and explained to James. Christina might not have told you, but actually, I'm divorced. We are a mother-child family. Then James' face, which had been smiling, went expressionless for a moment. What's wrong? I became anxious and asked James. Perhaps it was wrong of me to tell him. That's what I thought. However, in the next moment, James was already smiling again. It's nothing. Please don't worry. James said, still smiling. Really? I tilted my head as I talked. I was puzzled by James' change in expression but couldn't ask anything more about it. From then on, the wedding preparations proceeded smoothly. Christina seemed to enjoy preparing for the wedding, saying, maybe I'll change into a dress for the reception. Mom, what color dress do you think would be good? That sounds good. Whatever color you like is fine. I answered, but I was somewhat distracted. I couldn't forget James' expressionless face. Perhaps his family is strict about having a single parent. Therefore, I asked Christina. What did James say on the way home that day? About us being a mother-child family? Perhaps James was being opposed by his family about marrying Christina. I asked, but Christina answered puzzledly. He didn't say anything special. Mom, aren't you worrying too much? Since Christina said that, I couldn't ask anything more. But my bad feeling proved true. It was one night when this became clear. Mom. As soon as Christina came home, she called my name. Her expression was quite gloomy, and I asked her in surprise. Christina, why such a gloomy face? What happened? Even when I asked, Christina remained silent. It was unusual for her, typically optimistic, to look so troubled. After a while, she spoke with some difficulty. Actually, it seems that James's family doesn't think well of our marriage. Christina said this with a sad face. Why? It's because we're a single-parent family. They said that James would struggle because we're poor and have only one parent. Such a terrible thing to say. It must be very hard to hear such things from the in-laws. I asked Christina seriously. Did James's mother tell you this? Christina nodded silently in response. I was outraged by this. I didn't want them to assume we were poor just because we are a single-parent family. We've had our struggles, but now we live a normal life, working as hard as any man. Then Christina revealed something even more unbelievable. James's sister also said some things to me. Like what? I asked Christina. She said that we both are just after James's money. That it's impossible for people like us to become a family. Christina answered while looking dejected. Her face looked terribly sad. Surely, being directly told such things must have hurt her. And to say such terrible things about me, whom they haven't even met. James's family seemed unbelievable. What did James say at that time? I asked Christina. I remembered James's face when he visited our home the other day. His expressionless face back then might have been because he anticipated his family's reaction. It seems his family holds significant prejudices against single-parent families. I became worried about the future. Then Christina said. James defended me. After all, I work at the same company as he does. So there's no way I would ask him for money. I felt relieved. If James is on your side, Christina, that's reassuring. I murmured this without thinking. If James had not defended Christina and sided with his family, I would be worried about her future. She would likely continue to face sarcasm from his family and feel uncomfortable. However, thinking that James was on her side gave me some comfort. A few days later, Christina suggested meeting with James's family. Mom. Before the wedding, I want to have a meeting with James's family. I'm really sorry to ask this. It seemed to be a suggestion from James's mother. You should greet the family you're marrying into at least once. Your mother has that much common sense, right? She was told. We really couldn't say no. I'm really sorry. Christina apologized to me, considering my feelings. I would meet James's family for Christina's sake. Honestly, I didn't know what they might say. I didn't want to go, but it seemed proper to follow through with the etiquette. It's okay. I gave my consent. And then the day of the marriage introduction arrived. I went with Christina to a restaurant near James's family home. The reason it was a restaurant was because James's mother had said, "We can't have you crossing our threshold without being registered as family yet. There's a fancy restaurant nearby, so that should be fine." The restaurant chosen by James's mother was an upscale one, costing $300 per person for a course. I occasionally went there for business but almost never privately. I was puzzled by the choice of the restaurant by James's mother. When Christina first greeted James's family, James's mother had chosen a cafe near their home. And Christina even had to pay for her coffee. According to James's mother, "It's only natural since you're becoming a daughter-in-law." James ended up reimbursing Christina for the coffee later. But why was James's mother so condescending? Even though she was the one inviting us for the marriage introduction? I couldn't help but frown. However, if I, as Christina's mother, refused, Christina would certainly be criticized as being rude. After the marriage, Christina might feel uncomfortable. So, reluctantly, I accepted the proposal. I then applied minimal makeup and headed to the agreed place. Normally I wear full makeup for work, but I decided it was better to be modest today. My outfit was also much more subdued than usual. Wearing flashy clothes might make it seem like we were extravagant with money, since we were already being accused of being after James's money. Dressing modestly seemed wise. Thinking this, Christina and I entered the upscale restaurant and were escorted by the staff to a private room. When we opened the door, James and his family were there. "Christina, thank you for coming today," James greeted us politely. "Thank you for today as well." I responded to James and then faced his parents and sister. James's parents and sister were smirking, looking down on Christina and me. It was clear that we were not welcome. I greeted James's family with heightened caution. "Thank you for giving us your valuable time today. My name is Diane Morris, Christina's mother." Then James's mother replied with a smirk. "I don't really want to be taken care of, you know, Mom." James scolded his mother, but she was unfazed. Because being a single parent is a problem, right? You must be struggling with money. Even your clothes are so plain. James's mother scrutinized my outfit from head to toe and scoffed. My decision to dress plainly had backfired. James's sister also scoffed and taunted. "You should have married someone more decent." James really drew the short straw, huh? Taking in a poor mother and daughter. I felt irritated by James's sister's remarks. Such comments at a first meeting are truly disrespectful. However, I cannot let this disrupt Christina's marriage. "Excuse me." Reluctantly, I took my seat. Perhaps because I did not retort, James's family looked at me with amusement. Christina watched me with concern. James seemed slightly angry at his family's rudeness, his brow furrowed. Oblivious to this, his mother was in high spirits. "We've reserved a course meal today. It costs $300. James's mother happily told this to his sister. "Really? I'm looking forward to it since the course here is very expensive. We must eat a lot." James's sister was excited, and their father nodded happily. After a while, the staff brought the dishes. A colorful array of amuse-bouches, 3 different kinds on one plate, all looking very appetizing. However, only water was in front of me. "What?" I tried to stop the staff, but they had already left the room. Only water remained in front of me, a stark contrast. James looked on, stunned. His sister, perhaps aware of the situation, chuckled. Christina noticed too and said worriedly, "Mom." Then, in the next moment, James's mother grinned. "Poor people should be fine with just water, right?" James's mother said this and laughed uproariously. I frowned at her lack of decorum. "What is this?" I asked James's mother. It was her family who had chosen this restaurant and summoned us here. Yet they had no intention of hosting us properly. I was quite irritated inside. James's mother glanced at me and laughed as if pleased. Even though I was angry, she didn't seem to care. She seemed to enjoy it, actually. Oh. Not only are you from a single-parent family and poor, but are you also stupid? Why would we welcome someone like you? James's mother taunted me. The father nodded as if it was only natural. Aren't you embarrassed to be a single parent? A woman who has been left by her husband is nothing but flawed. Well, a plain woman like you isn't in demand anyway. The father said this and laughed heartily. It wasn't true that I had been left by my ex-husband, but he assumed so. I thought it was unbelievable for a person to say such things. James's sister laughed along, looking down on me. I don't want to end up like Christina's mom. Working for such low wages as a woman, giving up on being a woman, it's really pathetic. Mom. I'm sorry. Christina looked like she was about to cry. Probably feeling responsible for the tough situation I was in. She looked down. I had reached my limit of tolerance. After being looked down upon so much, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. It was probably time to fight back. At that moment. Enough. Picking on Christina's mom like this. Aren't you ashamed as adults? James yelled out loud. I was surprised that James defended me. James. Christina looked shocked too. James was visibly angry at his family, his face red. However, his family showed no signs of remorse. His mother continued to laugh joyfully, no need to defend the poor. Why is James getting so angry? The father nodded in agreement. James's words seemed to have no effect on them. I was utterly appalled by his parents' lack of decency. Maybe it was time to strike back. I had a trump card that would surprise the family. At that moment, James's sister started staring at my face. I involuntarily glared back at her. Then she murmured quietly. Wait, maybe? Right after that, James's sister looked at me and turned pale. It seemed that she had finally realized who I really was. I chuckled lightly. James's sister was shaking. No way. Noticing this, James's father looked puzzled and asked his daughter. What's wrong with you? You've been acting strange for a while now. James's mother also looked surprised at her daughter. Goodness, you're pale. Are you feeling ill? James's mother spoke with apparent concern, but his sister's trembling didn't stop. Considering the fact she had realized, it was no wonder. Then James's sister hesitantly asked her father. Dad, the company you work for is Hanson Handicrafts, right? She looked intently at her father, seeking confirmation. Hanson Handicrafts is a small to medium-sized enterprise with about 100 employees. And its salaries aren't competitive with larger companies. And I knew the company because it was related to my work. James's father laughed and said. What's up all of a sudden? I'm doing my best there as the head of sales. He continued. Thanks to my connections, I got you a job at our company as a part-timer, right? Be grateful. James's father laughed heartily. Just as I thought. James's sister looked resigned and dejected. The father, puzzled, asked her. But why are you asking that? Is this poor person just showing off that she's a regular employee while you're not? He looked down on me with disdain. I swore to myself that this man would face his downfall. Then James's sister sighed lightly and began to speak. Dad, don't you know your company's clients? The clients of the company? James's father asked, looking puzzled. James's mother looked blank, clearly not understanding much as a housewife. James's sister explained with difficulty. I've met Christina's mom before. Inside the company. She looked different then, so I didn't recognize her at first. James's father looked confused. What do you mean, inside the company? I'm sure I remember all the employees, even the part-timers. But I don't recall such an old woman. Calling me an old woman was another insult, and I frowned. But the father was too busy trying to remember to care. However, since I had not spoken directly with James's father, it's understandable that he wouldn't remember. Thinking this, James's sister began to apologize. Christina's mom, I'm truly sorry for everything. Seeing James's sister's demeanor, James's parents started to become unsettled. Why apologize? There's no need to apologize to such poor people, James's mother said, trying to lift her daughter's head. That's right. Don't you have any pride? Apologizing to someone so poor? James's father yelled at his daughter. James's sister glared back at her parents defiantly. Dad, Mom. Christina's mom is actually very wealthy. Far wealthier than you, Dad. What did you say? James's father glared at his daughter. He probably never expected such words from his own child. James's mother also reacted hysterically to her daughter's statement. What are you saying? James's sister said dismissively. Because Christina's mom is a CEO. I served her coffee in the company's reception room. You know Morris Baggs, right? Upon hearing that name, James's father froze. Then he slowly turned his head toward me. I chuckled deliberately. James's father's face turned pale. Morris Baggs? Isn't that the brand you finally managed to persuade for a collaboration? Planning to launch soon? Then it was James's mother's turn to scream. Morris Baggs, that's the brand that has stores in department stores, right? Even my bag is from there, she said, looking repeatedly at her own bag. When I entered the private dining room of the restaurant, I noticed a familiar bag. James's mother had been holding it carefully under the chair. It might be a breach of manners in a high-end restaurant, but it was clearly her favorite bag. I chuckled softly and informed her. That's a magazine giveaway, isn't it? I'm honored that you're using my brand. James's mother's face turned bright red, and she looked down embarrassedly. She was probably ashamed that her bag was a magazine freebie. I quickly pulled out my business card from my card holder. I am Diane Morris, the representative of Morris Baggs. James's parents stared at the business card intently. You were really a CEO. James's father was trembling as he looked at the card, while James's mother appeared incredulous. I spoke quietly while they stared at the card. We were planning a collaboration with Hanson Handicrafts. But it seems that won't be possible anymore. Such a pity. Hearing this, James's father looked shocked. Why? That was the project the president was most committed to. If that collaboration is cancelled, our company will, he said, trembling with fear. What's going on? James's mother asked, not understanding the situation. The truth was that Hanson Handicrafts was in financial trouble. The trend of crafting by hand has been declining over the years. When I was young, my mother would sew everything by hand. However, nowadays, cheap ready-made goods are more prevalent, a sign of the times. Hanson Handicrafts was heavily affected by this trend, with sales falling year by year. When the president of Hanson Handicrafts proposed the collaboration, he said it was a last-ditch effort to revive the company. However, I have collaborated with many well-known brands, so honestly, a collaboration with a small to medium enterprise like Hanson Handicrafts wasn't very appealing to me. Initially, I rejected the president's proposal, but eventually, his passion won me over, and I agreed to collaborate on creating bags. But now, that's all in the past. James's father was trembling, clearly terrified of what might come next. Ignoring his fear, I stated calmly. There's not much benefit in collaborating with Hanson Handicrafts. It was only the president's enthusiasm that swayed me. However, a company that looks down on Christina. I stared coldly at James's father. He was sweating profusely. In the next moment, he suddenly prostrated before me. What? James's mother was confused by her husband's sudden prostration, while James and Christina were also startled. I am truly sorry. James's father was rubbing his forehead on the ground, apologizing desperately. It was a spectacle of disregard for dignity. From my perspective, his apology seemed insincere. Merely a desperate attempt to protect himself after realizing my status. I didn't feel any genuine remorse in it. I spoke in an icy voice. Apologizing now? After all the disdain you've shown for Christina and me. To think that a mere prostration could make up for everything was absurd. James's father's thoughts were ridiculously naive. Then, James's father got up. Perhaps realizing that his performance would not change the situation. James's mother, still bewildered, said, "We're going to be family, so you'll forgive us, right?" She said this with a smirk. Then she continued without pause. "I'm a huge fan of Morris bags. Since we're family, I can get some products for free, right?" James's mother looked at me with hopeful eyes. I was dumbfounded. "Mom, that's too convenient." James also looked displeased, reprimanding his mother. His mother's comment was indeed too presumptuous. Yet she seemed not to understand, arguing, "Why not? Surely you have plenty of stock. It wouldn't hurt to give away a few." James's father and sister looked at their mother in disbelief. I looked at her and declared, "Our products are not free to give away. Besides, you are strangers to me." James's mother looked frustrated by my words. "Christina and our James are getting married, right? Then we're family. If we're family, you should be supporting us financially. You're a CEO, after all." James's mother said this nonchalantly. After all the derogatory remarks and treating us as poor, her attitude was unrepentant. Finally, James lost his temper. "Mom, aren't you embarrassed to change your attitude so quickly once you found out Christina's mom is a CEO?" James, his face red with anger, confronted his mother. However, his mother seemed unconcerned and laughed it off. "It's fine. CEOs have money to spare, right? We might as well get a little share." I quietly told his mother. "Even if Christina and James get married, I have no intention of forming a bond with you." His mother looked surprised and moved closer to me. "Don't say that. Once they're married, we'll be family anyway, so give us a bag or two." I was really infuriated by his mother. As I was thinking of how to respond, James stepped between his mother and me. "James?" I asked, and James looked troubled. I knew that Diane was a CEO. I kept silent because I knew my parents would surely trouble you if they found out. James's confession made his father look frustrated. "You knew? If you had told me, I would have. If you had known, you would have acted just like Mom, right?" James looked at his father with cold eyes. "How dare you speak to your parents like this? Keep this up, and we'll cut ties with you." His father yelled at him. Christina was flustered by this exchange. James sighed and declared, "I'm fine with being disowned. I'm cutting ties with you." "Why would you say that? After all the effort we put into raising you." His mother spoke to him, visibly shaken. His father and sister were also stunned, probably not expecting him to say he would cut ties. "I want to cherish Christina from now on. I don't need a family that disrespects Christina and her mom." James. His mother broke down crying on the spot. His father and sister stood there in shock. It must have been painful for them to be disowned by their beloved son. But it was their own fault. Regret this for the rest of your lives. I think you'll struggle in the future. I chuckled and said this. Christina then joined in. "We won't even tell you if we have kids," she firmly told her grandparents. "Not being able to see your grandchildren, please spare us." His mother cried out in agony. Amidst this, James quietly said, "We're done being a family." His words seemed to resonate. And his father and sister looked as if they were about to cry, trying to cling to us. I ignored his family and left the restaurant with Christina and James. Later, I heard that his father and sister were fired from the company. The day after the incident at the restaurant, I told the president that I wanted to cancel the collaboration with Hanson Handicrafts. Despite his numerous attempts to persuade me, I refused. I can't collaborate with a company that can disrespect people. I sympathized with the president's desire to save his company. But I couldn't support a company that employed people like his father and sister. I explained the situation to the president. Then, the president was furious. It turns out he also had a daughter about Christina's age. And couldn't forgive the actions of James's father and sister. The collaboration with me was very important to Hanson Handicrafts. And James's father and sister had ruined it. It was understandable that the president couldn't forgive them. James's father was getting on in years. And his sister had been only a temp through her father's connections. Now that they were fired from Hanson Handicrafts, finding new jobs would be very difficult for them. And James's mother was a housewife. They had cut ties with James, the only breadwinner. Once, his parents came to my company to plead their case directly. Please collaborate with Hanson Handicrafts. If you do, the president will surely rehire me. Even if a collaboration isn't possible, provide some financial assistance. Aren't we family, even if by marriage? Families are supposed to help each other when in trouble. Both were desperately pleading. After treating people like poor folks, it's laughable for them to claim family ties now. I firmly told them. Neither a collaboration nor financial assistance is possible. James has also cut ties with you, hasn't he? Please leave immediately. However, his parents didn't move to leave. But they tried to cling to me in desperation. I stood firm and told them again. Never appear before me again. If I see you again, I will call the police. Perhaps because I mentioned the police, the father said, please, not the police. We won't come again, and took his wife and left. Their clothes were dirty, and they likely weren't living well. They had spent so much time calling others poor. It was truly their own fault. I heard that his sister had become completely reclusive, unable to find a job or get married. She had become pessimistic about the future and wouldn't leave her room. Her future seemed nothing but bleak. 3 years have passed since then. Now, I am living with Christina and James. Ideally, as newlyweds, they should be living by themselves. However, James said, I think it's safer if Christina is with you in case of any emergency. And opted for us to live together. James, busy with work, often helps around the house along with Christina. I am truly grateful. And there has been a significant change for us three. One day, Christina approached me with a serious look. Mom. I was worried, thinking something had happened to her. Then, in the next moment, she smiled. It looks like I'm going to be a mom. Christina happily stroked her belly. That's wonderful, Christina. Congratulations. I was delighted and hugged her. Beside Christina and me, James was smiling happily. I believe many challenges lie ahead for us. But I'm confident we can overcome them together. I'm also looking forward to meeting my grandchild. Imagining our happy future, a smile naturally spread across my face.